Hello, back again to this next session from the A4Q Testing Summit 2026. And I'm very happy to welcome here René Van Veldhuijzen. I hope I pronounce it now correctly. Yeah, we know each other now, I think, half a year now, and I'm very happy that I can host you today with such a topic which makes me so curious. Because you will talk about, your topic is about 1664, the world of QA, if the Dutch had resisted selling New Amsterdam. So a very, very interesting topic, I think. You're a strategic consultant, and I read your biography with all your work you did, and one sentence was very important to me. You believe that the testing profession is the best within IT, and I think that is great. Before we come to to your presentation, for you, the audience, you are able to vote for the best speaker and the best presentation with this QR code here. So if you like René's speech here, then scan the code and go to the voting. And also, please use the chat if you have any questions. We will wrap them up at the end, and René is surely happy to answer them. And now I would say, René, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Richie. Of course, everyone, welcome. 1664, the world of QA, if the Dutch had resisted selling New Amsterdam. Well, let's start. Welcome, everyone. Geweldig dat jullie er zijn. Great that you are here. Today I'm taking you on a journey that starts right here in the skyline next to me. A Manhattan that looks familiar, but also just a little bit Dutch. Because in this alternate world, the red, white, and blue flies above the harbor. And the stars on the flag represent Dutch provinces and not states. A world where New Amsterdam never became New York. A world shaped by one tiny moment in 1664. And that's where our story will begin. A story about history, about alternate timelines, about stroopwafels, about AI, and above all, about the power of single question. What if? Like, what if the Dutch had resisted? Could one decision have changed the entire future? What if the world we know today, our language, our culture, our technology, had taken a different path? Because that question, that curiosity, that kind of imagination, that alternate timeline thinking is not just for historians. It's the beating heart of what we these days call quality engineering. So sit back, open your mind, and let's step into a world that almost existed to better understand the one we're building today. But first, let me introduce myself properly. There we go. My name is René Van Veldhuijzen. Thank you, Richie, for pronouncing it correctly. And I work as a strategic consultant at the Dutch testing company called Squarist. A place where curiosity, craftsmanship, and a healthy dose of Dutch pragmatism comes together. Right now, I'm on assignment as IT test manager at KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. And there we are doing something bold, replacing a 40-year-plus old mainframe with a modern multi-application landscape. A digital heart transplant while the patient is still flying, so to say. And all the while, we're trying to get Henk and Ingrid safely to their annual suntan in Benidorm, so they can enjoy their friet van Piet, old Dutch things, you can look them up, without ever noticing the technological miracle happening behind the scenes. Now, outside KLM, I wear a few more hats. I'm the chapter lead for the Ministry of Testing Netherlands, where we bring testers together to learn, share, and occasionally argue passionately about edge cases no one else cares about. And this year, I'm also the co-organizer of the Dutch Testing Day. And I myself am the proud creator of my own annual mini-conference, Testmaas, a small, loud, very Dutch celebration of testing and charity. And because I apparently don't understand the concept of free time, I also serve as the chairman of our local tennis club. Because why not add more responsibility before bedtime, right? And before we go any further, a small disclaimer. I just utter what I think is right. Use what you can, ignore what you can't, and feel free to disagree loudly. I'm used to testers doing that. And finally, my geuzennaam or nickname is Testimist. And people always ask me what that means. And it's actually quite simple. Because a pessimist sees problems, an optimist sees opportunities, and a testimist sees both and tests them. Now, the fun thing is, it actually literally translates into testing in Estonian. And from the whole description, I derived my other job title, which is called Test Positivo. Okay, back to my story. Let's travel back to the 1600s, to a place that existed long before skyscrapers, yellow cabs, Starbucks, and Broadway. A place that the Dutch once called New Nederland, and it's at its heart, New Amsterdam. A small but bustling trading town on the island of Manhattan. A settlement of wooden houses, muddy streets, market stalls, and the smell of salt and spices drifting in from the harbor. A place where Dutch merchants bargained loudly, where German and Scandinavian settlers built new lives, and where Africans, both free and enslaved, lived, worked, and shaped the town, and where the Lenape, the original inhabitants of the region, had been living, trading, and thriving for centuries before Europeans arrived. Now, New Amsterdam was a mosaic of cultures long before the word multicultural even existed. You'd hear Dutch next to German, next to the Lenape, next to Scandinavian dialects, a chaotic symphony of languages that somehow worked. There were canals, there were trading posts, there were taverns where sailors exaggerated their advantage. There were markets where you could buy furs, fish, tobacco, and anything else that floated across the Atlantic or came from the trading routes from the west. And yes, and even back then, people complained about the rent. Some things never change, right? But beneath this everyday life, something else was happening. History was balancing on a knife's edge. One decision, one negotiation, one moment of resistance or surrender could have changed the entire future of this place, and with it, the world we live in today. Now, the relationship between the Dutch and the Lenape was, let's say, complex. Not a fairy tale partnership, but not a brutal conquest either, but something in between. A fragile balance of trade, negotiation, misunderstanding, and coexistence. We, the Dutch, arrived with ships full of tools, textiles, iron, and bureaucracy. The Lenape had something far more valuable: knowledge of the land, food systems that actually worked, and, let's be honest, a level of patience that would put modern customer services to shame. And then there's the famous purchase of Manhattan, a story every American school kid learns about, but the details are, well, quite Dutch. Peter Minuit, governor of the colony for the Dutch West India Company, thought he was buying the land from the rightful owners, but historical records show he actually made the deal with the Canarsie, a group who were leasing the land from the Lenape. So the Dutch essentially bought a house from someone who was renting a room from someone who didn't even know the house was for sale. So a classic real estate mix-up, but then in 17th century edition. Still, despite the confusion, there was cooperation and mutual benefit. The Dutch brought trade networks and tools. The Lenape brought survival skills, diplomacy, and a deep understanding of the land. Two cultures navigating each other, sometimes clashing, sometimes collaborating, always negotiating the future of this tiny settlement that would one day become one of the most influential cities on earth. But then, September 1664, the calm of New Amsterdam is shattered. On the horizon, dark shapes, but those are not clouds, they're warships. An entire English fleet, unmistakable, overwhelming, gliding towards the harbor like a spoiler alert for Dutch history. They send a message so short, it might as well be a Slack notification. This is ours now. The Dutch look at their 150 soldiers, then they look at their cannons, and they look back at the fleet. And you can almost hear them thinking, oh. But Peter Stuyvesant, the stubborn one-legged director general, is having none of it. He wants to fight. He tears up the surrender letter, literally, and insists on resisting. A man with one leg, but 2 times the determination. But the people of New Amsterdam, the merchants, the pilgrims, the families, the citizens, they take one look at the English fleet and say, yeah, no, absolutely not. We're not dying for this. They refuse to risk their homes and their lives for a battle they cannot win. So they write their own letter, a very polite, very Dutch letter. And in the end, Stuyvesant signs. No heroic last stand, no glorious defense, just a quiet, pragmatic decision. You might say the most Dutch ending imaginable. And just like that, New Amsterdam is handed over without a single shot fired. A historic Control+Z that was never pressed. A timeline that could have gone anywhere, but didn't. New Amsterdam becomes New York, and the rest, as they say, is history. But what if that hadn't happened? What if the Dutch had said, "Yo, Englishmen, go home and take your bad tea with you"? What if New Amsterdam had remained Dutch? What if the United States had grown up not as an English-speaking nation, but as a Dutch-speaking republic? Now, in this alternate timeline, the Dutch don't blink. They hold their ground. The English fleet sails home with bruised pride and unsold tea. New Amsterdam grows, not into New York, but into the beating heart of the United Provinces of America, the UPA, a nation shaped by trade, tolerance, canals, and compromise. Independence still arrives in 1775, but peacefully, diplomatically, in true Dutch fashion, with a meeting, a handshake, and probably some cheese and a packet of stroopwafels. The Civil War still happens because the fight to abolish slavery is unavoidable, but the UPA remains tied to the Dutch crown, a kingdom across the ocean with a very long memory. Imagine it, a land of canals and skyscrapers, of mercantile spirit and polder model politics, where the flag waves differently, where the national anthem sounds suspiciously like a remix of the Dutch Wilhelmus, and where every child grows up speaking with a Dutch accent and a strong native American swagger. A world that feels familiar, but unmistakably, wonderfully Dutchified. And then something big happens, something history-shaping, something no one in our current timeline could see coming. Dutch becomes the world language. Not English, not Mandarin, not Spanish. No global empire of Shakespeare. No Hollywood accent. No how you doing culture. Instead, everyone speaks Dutch. And suddenly the world collectively struggles with the linguistic gymnastics of gezellig, a word with no translation, no boundaries, and no mercy. Uitwaaien, which does not mean waving goodbye, but going outside to let the wind reset your brain. And voorpret, the joy before the joy, the excitement before the event even starts. Now, in this timeline, school children in Tokyo, Nairobi, Sao Paulo, and New Amsterdam, UPA, all sit at their desks practicing the Dutch alphabet, wondering why on earth one language needs so many vowels in a row. Language guides are written in Dutch. English becomes the difficult foreign language everyone struggles with. And every classroom waves the UPA flag while the teacher asks, "Spreekt u Nederlands?" A world where Dutch didn't just survive, it won. Okay, sorry, I got a little carried away here. But let's stay in this alternate timeline for a moment longer. Because if the world had gone Dutch, and that's a strange term, I know, our tech world would also look very different. What about Silicon Valley? Well, it still exists, but without the place names you are used to. It emerges in the triangle of West-Amsterdam, New Delft, and Willemstad, the global tech hub of the United Provinces of America. And the big tech companies, they're not Google, Apple, or Meta. They're Adyen, Philips, Booking.com, and ASML. Oh wait, those actually exist. Turns out we Dutch are doing pretty well. But all right, let's go full alternative reality. Zoeker, Tulipsoft, Windmill Web Services, Polder Robotics, and Bitterball Labs. Scrum isn't called Scrum anymore. It's Wendbaarheid. And Scrum Masters, they're officially known as stroopwafel coaches. 50% of their job is facilitation, 50% making sure everyone has enough syrup in their system to stay productive. Daily stand-ups last at least 45 minutes because everyone needs to get their Dutch blend coffee and complain about the weather. And AI? Well, AI prompting happens in Dutch by default. Write me a poem about cheese in the style of Multatuli. Generate a test script for a POS system that crashes at 0.00 guilders. And ChatGPT, or rather Spreek GPT, responds with, "Of course, one moment please," and sounds suspiciously like Mark Rutte explaining NATO's Article 5 after a meeting with Trump. This is the tech world in a universe where the Dutch never left Manhattan, and the world never escaped the gravitational pull of poldering, canals, pragmatic chaos, and compromise. This is related to the butterfly effect, and it teaches us something astonishing. Tiny causes can create enormous consequences. A butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and somewhere far away a storm begins to form in Texas. History works the same way. A single decision in 1664, one moment of resistance, one torn letter without a rewrite, one refusal to surrender could have changed everything. It could have determined which language you speak today, which flag flies over the White House, and whether your search engine is called Google or Zoeker. In my alternate timeline, that one moment leads to Dutch as the world language, Silicon Valley rising in West Amsterdam, and children everywhere struggling to pronounce difficult words with g. But that's not how it went. The English won. New Amsterdam became New York. English became the global language, and Silicon Valley is still in the state of California, not in New Delft or Willemstad. Yet this alternate story reminds us of something vital. How one tiny what-if can completely reshape the world. How fragile history is, how easily timelines diverge, and how the smallest of choices in life, in tech, in testing, can ripple outward into consequences no one had ever expected. And here's the thing. The butterfly effect isn't just a story about history. It's our daily reality as testers, as quality engineers. Because the same way a single decision in 1664 could have changed the language you speak today, a single unchecked assumption, a tiny requirement nobody questioned, a small edge case nobody explored can ripple through a system and create consequences far bigger than anyone could ever have imagined. We work with butterfly effects every day. One missing validation, one misunderstood user flow, one AI model making one wrong assumption, one harmless configuration change, one innocent go live on a Friday afternoon just before the Vrijmibo, aka drinks and bitterballs. And suddenly, Henk and Ingrid can't check in. Payments do fail at 0.00 euros. Flights don't board. Or an entire release derails because of one tiny flapping detail. This is where our alternative timeline becomes more than a fun story. It becomes a mirror. Because every what-if in history has a twin in software. And that is where quality engineering begins. So we have arrived at quality engineering, the hip and happening new term for quality assurance and testing. Because testers, we're not just bug hunters, we're not automation jockeys or dashboard gardeners, we're alternate history writers. And in quality assurance, we explore futures that haven't happened yet, so they don't happen by accident. Every test we design begins with the same question. What if? What if the user does something unexpected? What if the system reacts differently than we imagined? What if the world, the messy, chaotic human world, doesn't go as planned? Every what if is a new timeline, a possible future, a branch in the multiverse of your product. And we as quality engineers walk those branches before anyone else does. That's the essence of testing. Predicting, imagining, assessing, and rewriting reality before it breaks. We don't wait for the butterfly to flap its wings, we go looking for it. So let's cross the bridge from 1664 to modern day life. Without any warships, without any surrender letters, without all the canals, and hopefully without any butterflies. Because the same forces that shaped history shape our software every single day. Now let's talk about requirements. Requirements are a linear item, a neat sentence, a tidy assumption how the world should behave. But a user is anything but linear. Requirements assume predictability. They describe an ideal world where users are logical, systems behave, infrastructure is stable, and nothing unexpected hardly ever happens. However, users are anything but like requirements. They do those things that no one has foreseen. They enter their date of birth as 1664 because That's when my family started. They click the same button 200 times because it didn't work the first 199. They withdraw 0.00 euros just to see what happens. And they give an AI a prompt in Frisian because, well, why not? And precisely there, between the logic of the document and the chaos of the human, stands the tester. Not as a controller or not as a gatekeeper, but as a translator of reality, a bridge between what was conceived on paper and what actually happens in the wild. We take the linear world of requirements and collide it with the non-linear world of humans. And in that collision, we discover the truth and uncover quality. And nowadays, as we know, we have AI. It has to be mentioned, right? A force of logic wrapped in unpredictability. It's brilliant and baffling. It can hallucinate. It can make assumptions no one ever programmed. It can mirror our biases, amplify our quirks, and turn a single prompt into 1,000 unintended consequences. And it gets even stranger when human language enters the mix, because people don't speak or even write in clean, perfect sentences. They communicate in dialects, slang, half-thoughts, and inside jokes. Ask AI something in Cockney, sprinkle in a bit of Frisian, or mix Quebec French with English, and suddenly the model is trying to decode a linguistic smoothie. One dialect word in the wrong place, and the AI can confidently generate the wrong answer, the wrong assumption, or the wrong action, and all with a total conviction and a friendly, "What a great question, René." AI doesn't answer questions or invent new ones. It's the latest source of what if. And for testers, that means the map just got bigger and much, much stranger. So we, the testers, have become alternate history detectives. We investigate futures that haven't happened yet, so they never become production incidents. We reconstruct the invisible chain reactions, the tiny flaps of the digital butterfly wings that could one day trigger the Unix bug war of 2038. We are the time travelers of IT, wandering through every what if long before anyone else sees the possibility. This is the pure essence of quality engineering. Not checking what is, but imagining what might be. Not validating the present, but safeguarding the future. Because if you don't test the what if, the future will test it for you. And the future is far less polite. Skip the what if, and you end up with software that only works when humans behave perfectly. Systems never drift, AI never hallucinates, and that's a world that will never exist. People don't follow the script. Systems don't stay stable. Reality doesn't care about your acceptance criteria. That's why we explore the alternate timelines. That's why we imagine the impossible. That's why we chase the weird, the messy, the unexpected, because the moment we stop asking what if, we stop protecting the world from the future it isn't ready for. Quality engineering is not about confirming what we expect. It's about preparing for what we do not expect. We test systems that bend but don't break. We strive for software that can take a beating. We ensure that the future does not crash. But resilience doesn't happen by accident. We tackle the what if with the full toolbox of quality engineering, like exploratory testing. It lets us structure our curiosity to uncover the unknown unknowns. Or heuristics with mnemonics like SFDPO, few hiccups, and RCRCRC to reveal hidden risks. Test design techniques have proven ways like boundary testing, equivalence partitioning, and state transitions. Something as ancient as risk-based testing, helping us focus on what can hurt the most and not just go for the easiest check. Model-based testing, which generates scenarios humans would never ever think of. And chaos engineering, because what's more fun than deliberately breaking things to see how the system survives, using something like fuzzing, just bombarding the system with malformed, random, degenerative, or extreme inputs. AI-oriented testing, probing hallucinations, bias, drift, and unpredictable model behavior. And user behavior simulation, which can model real-world chaos, like impatience, dialects, mistakes, and even creativity. This is quality engineering, not guarding the past, as I said, but fortifying the future. This webinar began with a single alternate history. What if the Dutch had resisted in 1664? One tiny moment could have reshaped our entire world, our language, our technology, even the way we live and the form of Silicon Valley. That same question, the what if, is the most important question we can ask in our efforts of quality assurance. Testers are not passive checkers. We are explorers of the unknown. We are mesmerized by the what if, drawn to the paths no one else notices. Where others see a straight line, we see a branching universe of possibilities. We wander into the corners of systems where assumptions go to die, mapping out the alternate futures that could unfold if no one pays attention. We are the cartographers of uncertainty. And exploration isn't guesswork, it's craftsmanship. Our tool belt is overflowing with heuristics, models, exploratory testing, risks analysis, chaos engineering, fuzzing, AI probing, scenario modeling, and much, much more. Each tool helps us shine a light into a different part of the unknown. We don't just test, we interrogate reality with structured curiosity. And the more unpredictable the world becomes, the more valuable our tool belt is. Users are gloriously chaotic. AI is unpredictably creative. Systems behave beautifully in the stage environment and bizarrely in production. So we investigate the unexpected, the weird inputs, the strange timing, the dialects, the impatience, the creativity, the stubbornness, I just wanted to see what happens. We test the things no requirement ever dared to imagine, because reality is not linear and neither is human behavior. Our job is not to make software pass today's tests, it's to help it survive tomorrow's world. We think beyond the happy path, beyond the release date, beyond the assumptions of the moment. Future-proof systems are not built by accident, they are built by people who constantly ask, what if the world shifts under our feet? And in the end, unpredictability is everywhere. Resilience is the art of expecting the unexpected, testing systems that bend instead of break. Testers are the architects of that resilience. We don't eliminate uncertainty, we prepare systems to thrive in it, because the world always surprises us. And resilience is how we stay ready. So, from that wrap up, let's focus on the 3 core takeaways for today. The pillars of everything we explored. Unpredictability is universal. In history, in humans, in AI, in software. Tiny moments and strange decisions shape the world we live in, and they shape your product just as much. Every system lives in a universe of surprises, decisions, edge cases, and unintended consequences. Assumptions are the enemy of quality. Every assumption is a timeline waiting to break. If we don't test the what if, we get software that only works when everyone behaves exactly as expected. And we, the testers, are the architects of resilience. We explore alternate futures, so the real one doesn't collapse. We imagine what might happen, not what just should happen. We help design systems that bend, adapt, and survive reality, not just the requirements. And remember the moral of this webinar? If you don't test the what if, the future will test it for you. Therefore, be curious, be bold, be the time traveler of your team, use your tool belt, chase every what if, and test the future before it arrives. Dank voor uw aandacht. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, René. It's a really nice what-if story. I like it so much, and
I went all over the board here.
Yeah, I think you can now redo every year another speech about that, doing another timeline. So maybe there are some other ideas you want to mention. So thank you so much. Before we come to the questions, if you find this speech great and really that's the best one now, you can vote here. Over René is the QR code, scan the code, and there you can vote for the best presentation and best speaker. And now it's time for your questions. So let's wait. The first one, if you had to translate your whole story into one practical tip for teams tomorrow, what would that be?
Oh, well, Great question. And honestly, I would boil everything down to just one habit. Make what if part of your daily thinking. Not as a formal step or as a checklist, but as a reflex. Because what we saw in 1664 is exactly what happens in software every day. One small decision, one missed assumption, one this should work, and suddenly you're living in a completely different reality than you expected. And so in practice, it's simple. What if the user does something weird? What if the system behaves differently in production? What if the input isn't what we assumed it was? The teams that ask those kind of questions early help build resilient systems. The teams that don't end up debugging their own history, right? So if there was only one key takeaway, don't just test what you built, but test what the world might do to it.
Yeah, great tip. Thank you so much. And we have another question, I think. Yeah, you describe testers as architects of resilience. What makes that different from traditional testing?
Yeah, I really like that term because it changes the mindset completely. Traditional testing often looks backward. It asks, does this work as expected? But resilience engineering looks forward. It asks, will this still work when reality hits it? And reality is messy. Users are unpredictable, as I said, and AI is maybe even more unpredictable. Even history seems unpredictable, right? As you heard from my story with the tiny moment in 1664. So as quality engineers, we're not just validating requirements, we're designing for survival. That means testing weird inputs, exploring new edge cases, simulating chaos, challenging assumptions, because assumptions are where the systems break. So being an architect of resilience actually means we don't just check if something works, but we make sure it keeps working when everything goes wrong. And that's a very different job.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a very, very interesting thought. The architect of resilience is, I think, a title I would write on my cards too, on my business cards.
I have a whole book full of these kinds of terms for you if you want. So
yeah, great. Thank you very much that you were part here of the A4Q Testing Summit 2026. I hope the people will enjoyed it, and you will get a lot of votes here now. And for all other people, we have another slots upcoming in the different tracks, and also tomorrow, the second day of the A4Q Testing Summit. So enjoy the rest of the conference and have a good day.